Hi, I'm Brittney Saunders and welcome to Big Business, the place where business is far from boring, and today I'm recording on Gadigal land. Now, I somehow managed to build an empire from the garage underneath my house, and I'm here in this podcast to share it all with you, from the wins, the huge mistakes, the challenging times, and there's a lot of them, and funny moments in between. So whether you're in business already, you're wanting to start a business, or you're not even in business at all and you're just looking for some inspiration, or you simply just want to hear the tea when it comes to running a business, this is the podcast for you. Now, coming up in today's episode, I'm going to be going through the true cost of opening one of my retail stores. I'm sure you all know this by now. We have 4 FAYT stores, and I currently may or may not be working on opening the 5th one. And opening one of our stores costs me roughly $500,000 in cold, hard cash. I have never taken out any type of loan for FAYT. I've never been given any money. I don't have any investors and I don't come from any family money. So how have I managed to afford opening 4 stores while still running our online store? And how on earth could opening one store cost $500,000? I'm taking you through it all today. I'm going through all the costs and you'll be surprised at all of the hidden costs that come with opening a store. Anyway, time is quite literally money, so let's get down to business. If I had $1 for every time someone from our community said, "When are you going to open a store here? Come to Adelaide, come to Perth, we never get anything in Perth," I'd say, do you have $500,000? Because that's how much it costs to open one FAYT store. If I had $1 for every person that asked, I'd have enough money to open maybe one more store. I think, first of all, it's such an amazing thing to experience as a business owner, having your own community begging you to open a store up near them. I don't think that's something that many business owners would get to experience, their own community saying, "Hey, come here, come here." To have that type of demand says a lot, and I'm eternally grateful for that as a business owner, to have people wanting my business near them so they can come and shop at it. I don't take that demand or want for our business for granted at all. But in the same breath, it's obviously so easy for our customers to say these things like, "Open here, open there, come to my local Westfield." If it was that easy, I would have a store in every single Westfield and shopping centre and boutique around the whole country. I'd even have stores in New Zealand. I would be global. If it was that easy, don't you think I would already have more stores? And that's what I always think when I get these comments. And I love the comments. I love that people love us and they want us near them. And why isn't it easy? It's because it's so fucking expensive. And like I mentioned in last week's episode, it adds so much more work, not only to my life, but to our business. And it also opens up that can of worms and adds more fuckery into our lives. And I'm going to explain exactly what I mean by that in this episode. Now, when it comes to our stores, I have to do one at a time because it costs $500,000 every single time. And every time I open a new store, I run a huge risk of fucking up my business financially. But what do you mean by that? How could you fuck up your business by just opening one more store? Never having any type of funding for FAYT is something that I'm extremely proud of. And I actually don't think I talk about that enough. And whenever I do mention that to someone that is in business, like someone who has a big business, they're like, "Holy shit, you've done all this out of your own back pocket?" Absolutely. I'm very proud of single-handedly doing all of this on my own. And the way that I have done that over all these years is I have reinvested every single dollar that this business has made back into itself. Myself and my partner AJ, we pay ourselves a very, very small wage. We earn less than all of our staff. We are at the bottom of the fucking payroll on purpose because I know that money is way better being in the business than it is in my pocket. And in our 6 years that we've been doing this, AJ and myself have never taken 1 cent from profits. We've never taken a payout from any profits because we choose to. And trust me, we sit down with our accountant and he goes, you're doing well. Do you want to take a cut? You can take a cut of profits as the owner. I say no. Number one, because what are we going to use to spend that on? We have a good life already, there's nothing that we need. But also, I would much rather that go back into the business. When I first started FAYT, the way that I was lucky was I was an influencer as well. And my advice to anyone, if you are wanting to start a business, if you can have that other income, that's going to make it a lot easier for you. I think it would be really hard to give up your full-time job or whatever it is to try to start your business. Like, that's when you're going to get yourself into a lot of financial strife. Whereas for me, I was influencing, I was earning a great amount of money every year, and then I could work on FAYT and not need to worry about paying myself anything from FAYT. And just under 2 years ago now is when I gave up being an influencer. I stopped all that, and that's when I started paying myself a wage from FAYT. Maybe like a year and a half ago is when I first started seeing pay slips from FAYT, and on purpose, it's so low. Like, the amount of money that I get is so low, but it's on purpose. And could I pay myself a shit ton? Absolutely. But that's not why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I think if you are going into business and your number one priority is earning lots of money for yourself, I don't know how that's going to look for you. Like, I'm sure some people are in business to make a shit ton of money for their own financial gain, but that's not my motive. But I think this is a good reminder for all of you owners out there, if you're wanting to start your own business. When it comes to business, be prepared to put all the money back into it. It's not this thing that you just start up and then it starts making money and you take it all for yourself. I think you'll see a lot of people do that, and that's when it goes under. Because you've profited, you've taken the profits, and then what's left? You need to keep reinvesting back into that business to make it grow, and that's exactly what I've done with FAYT. You simply can't grow something without putting money into it. That's the way business works. I think on this point as well, it's really important for consumers to understand, and like me as a consumer of other brands, when it comes to small business, your purchases go a very long way, and we forget that. I open up each new store using the money we make from our daily sales. I don't go and get a loan to open the next store. I save and save and save from people that come and shop in our stores. I save and save and save from people that make those online purchases, and I use that money to then pay for the next store. So every time you're shopping with a small business and you're placing an order online or you're shopping in store, like, especially if it's a small business, like, you're helping that business do all the things it needs to do. Like, when people shop with me, they're keeping all of my staff in jobs. They're helping us pay all our rent and warehouse and everything. But also, you're literally helping me to fucking grow my dreams and like grow this brand. And you always hear people say, support small, but you don't really ever think about it. But like, that's a great example. It's because of everyone that has supported my business so far that I've been able to open all the stores and do all the things. If it wasn't for our customers, I would never be able to open stores, like, point blank. I've even jokingly said to people before when they've asked me, like, in person to open a store near them, I always go, well, when was the last time you placed an order online? And they're always like, oh, ages ago. I'm like, well, your online order goes towards my next store. It's genuinely the people that are shopping with us today that help me to open the next store tomorrow. So let's get into it. What costs 500 grand exactly? And I want to stress to you that 500 grand is money that we spend before the store is even open. That's just the starting cost. After that, you then have monstrous ongoing costs. This 500 grand is just to get the thing built. And why is it so scary and risky? So let's break it down. Before anything starts to happen, you'll have to pay your security bonds, assuming you're renting a shop, that is, which is what we do. Before signing, I don't have the kind of money to go and buy a retail store every time. You're signing a lease every single time. So before signing any commercial lease, much like a residential lease, you know, when you get your residential lease and you have to put down your bond and whatever everyone puts their money in, you need to put down a holding deposit as well as a security bond. So there's multiple things, which is generally 3 or 4 months rent. Straight up. Now, as you can imagine, commercial rent is expensive. And the 500 grand that I keep talking about, that doesn't include rent. I've had a lot of people over the years ask me how much is it to rent these stores, like Westfield stores and stuff. So when it comes to the cost of commercial rent, much like houses, there are so many factors that come into play. The size of the shop, whereabouts the shop is. If you're in a shopping centre, it will also depend what kind of shops are around you. If you're in a more premium area of the shopping centre, and with a shopping centre as well, as I'm sure most of you could guess, it's more expensive than getting a shop out on the street because you're also paying the shopping centre and you're paying for that foot traffic. So I can't tell you exactly how much rent is for all commercial properties, but just know with our stores, you're looking at over 100 grand a year per shop just in rent alone. We have little stores. Some of our stores are 200 grand a year plus. I can't imagine how much it would cost to rent a fucking Kmart. It's got to be over $1 million a year, but just know rent is really expensive. So let's break down some numbers. For context, let's say our rent is $150,000 a year for one store. That's $12,500 a month. And before we've even moved in, we've got to pay 3 months rent as a security bond. There's $37,000 straight up. You'll also have some sort of holding deposit as well, which may be another month's rent. So another 12.5 grand. See how that 500 grand doesn't seem like that far away at all already? Before you've even done anything, you've paid 50 grand in your bonds. Another huge chunk of money we spend on opening a new store is obviously on stock for the store. When we open a new store, it opens up a new line of stock ordering in our business. We don't just simply take some stock from the warehouse and put it in the store. That's what we did when we opened our Newcastle shop because we were so tiny. I quite literally took stock from online, took it off there and hung it up in the store, but that's not how it works with these new stores. So now when we're writing our orders, we order for online, but then we order for Chermside. We order for Hawthorn in Melbourne. We order for Newcastle. We order for Miranda in Sydney. They all have their own orders, and you do that based on how busy that store is. So when we're opening another new store, they get a whole new ordering line. Now with us and our experience of store openings being really popular, which again we're very lucky for, we have to make sure we order enough stock so we don't run out. And on average, we would spend over $150,000 on stock for one singular store opening. We order enough stock based off our previous stores to last us for at least 3 months because you can't underdo it and order just enough and then it's all gone in the first weekend, because then what the fuck do you do? When you open a store, you've got to set yourself up for months based off previous store stats. Otherwise, you'd be up shit creek without a paddle. So where are we at already? We've spent $37,500 on our bond, $12,500 on a holding deposit, which is 50 grand already, and we've ordered all of our stock, which let's just say it's 150 grand, which brings us to a total of 200 grand already, and we haven't even moved in. We haven't even started building anything. How easy was that? So where's the other 300 grand going? The biggest cost ever in opening a store is the fit out. Now, when it comes to doing a fit out of a store, it's going to vary. It's going to depend on what kind of space that you're working with. With commercial, you can either do a cold shell or you can move into a store that's kind of already there and then you just make it your own. We've done both. Our Hawthorn store, for example, kind of was already really nice, and then we just had to just add some more things in and build in change rooms. But then our Chermside store in Brisbane, for example, that was a kids stuff toy store. Like, it was bright red. It had like bookshelves everywhere. We had to rip the whole thing out and we went back to a cold shell and then you start all over again. So depending on what you're doing, that's going to make the cost different. I also would like to mention the fact that I've got bloody expensive tastes. You've seen our FAYT stores. They're not just racks shoved in there and off you go. Like, when it comes to fitting out a store, obviously it depends on the size and how much space you have to work with, but also with what you want to do with it. And for us with our stores, I'm not going to cheap out and do anything on a low budget and whatever, just whack some racks in there. We're making our stores real fucking nice. So that's why it comes with such a cost. I'm going to use our Westfield Chermside store in Brisbane as an example for this podcast. It's our biggest store, and the fit out cost was over $300,000. So what makes up that $300,000? I've actually pulled up our original quote just to tell you all the things and how much they cost. So let's go through some of them. First of all, demolition, 18 grand for us to rip out that kids stuff store and make the store empty and get rid of all the rubbish, and for the builders to rip it out, 18 grand. Walls and ceilings, because we ripped it out back to a cold shell, we had to put new gyprock, put a new roof in. You're looking at 21 grand. The shop front, if you've been to our Chermside store, it's absolutely stunning. We tiled the outside of it. It looks like kind of like a doll's house from the outside. It's all white. We painted it, put door handles on. It looks stunning. That alone for the shop front was 22 grand. Mirrors throughout the whole store, all your change rooms, and then we've got other big mirrors around the store. You're looking at 11,000. Painting, we had to paint, not us, but, get a painting crew in to paint the entire store, 14 grand. Electrical, the one where it stings a lot every time, $40,000 to fit out the Chermside store with all the lighting. And if you go in there, you'll see it's bloody beautiful. There's track lights, everything. It looks amazing. And AJ doesn't do any of that. AJ is an electrician, for those of you that don't know, but especially when you're working in a Westfield, you have to work with electricians that have a contract with that Westfield centre. And AJ's not going to fucking go do that, is he? So we're going to pay the electricians $40,000. Signage. We have 2 signs in our Westfield Chermside store. One is up on the wall behind the counter and the other one's out on the shop front and it's all lit up and beautiful. 17 grand for 2 signs. I'm getting puffed reading out all these numbers. And another huge one that is always going to be big no matter what you're doing, whether it's a house or a shop, joinery, all your cupboards, your doors, your counter, all that sort of stuff, $42,000 in our Chermside store. Our counters alone, if you've seen our counters, they're the big, beautiful oval things. Everyone compliments them. They're completely tiled and they're fucking massive. Our Hawthorn one's a littler one, but the one in Newcastle, Miranda, and in Chermside, they're stunning. And everyone always goes, where's that from? I'm like, it's custom made and they're 10 grand just for the one counter. FFE, which is furniture, fixtures and equipment, 26 grand just for all the bits and bobs and this and that. And then another huge cost with any project where you're working with builders is going to be your preliminaries and your management. So your site manager, your engineers, like whatever, 45 grand for Chermside. These are obviously big ticket items when it comes to building a store, but there's also tons of small things, which also really adds up. You know, $2,000 here, $1,500 there. Like there's so many of those little things, like paying for nails and screws. Like you just spend $800 here, $1,000 here, and it really adds up. My budget when building any store is always within $200,000 to $300,000. That's always my budget that I'm working with, but that's me limiting it at that. We could make our store 1,000,000 times more fancy and could easily spend $500,000 alone just on the fit out. The bigger your store is, the more the fit out's going to cost as you have more space to work with and fill out. It's absolutely crazy. So what are some other costs involved with a store additional to your fit out costs? An architect and designer costs, you're looking at easily 10 to 20 grand there to have a designer work with you on the project, depending on who you're working with. Our security cameras cost 5 to 6 grand. And we just have like a few security cameras. Imagine being a Kmart or whatever and you've got 100 freaking cameras in that store. I can't even imagine how much that would cost. You also need to get all sorts of approvals and certifications and engineer reports. That could be another 5 to 10 grand. Coat hangers. Few $1,000s for every store on coat hangers. We get ours custom made. If you've ever seen them, you know they're really nice. Shopping bags and tissue paper and all those little things. There's a few more $1,000. And mannequins. We have those in our Westfield stores. We don't have them in the boutiques. They just feel more suited to Westfields to have those mannequins. We get those custom made overseas and they're about $500 each. There's also the people-related costs with opening a store. Our hiring process alone takes months. We have head office staff that hire for the new store, which is months in wages, doing all those initial Zoom interviews and all that kind of shit, going through all the applicants. You're looking at months in wages. With us opening stores that aren't local to us, you've then also got travel costs for all head office staff that are traveling to the new store, including me. That's flights, accommodation. We pay for food. We pay for travel time. It's bloody a lot. We've also got wages in training the new staff before the store opens. So paying all those staff to come to the training days that we do with them and then paying us to be there, teaching them everything they need to know. We've also got wages in hiring new head office staff to support the new stores. As our stores grow, we need to continue growing our head office team. We can't just keep opening new stores without hiring more people on the back end. And that's another thing too. When people are like, open here, open there. I'm like, you want to go and hire the 2 new full-timers I've got to get to be in Newcastle to help this happen? So you've got months there of hiring new people, getting them in, training them to have them help from our head office manage our stores. Because I think what a lot of people probably wouldn't think about, or maybe you do if you work in retail or something, is we've got all these stores around the country, but we're managing them full time as well from our head office in Newcastle. So you've got a lot of money in wages there as well. We've got wages in setting up the store, which in our experience takes a good week once you're actually in there getting all that stock out, fucking steaming it. You've all seen it on my stories. It's a nightmare. You've got so many wages in that. You've got wages in creating content for the store opening. We'll have our social team come for a couple of days and be there filming everything. You've got to pay those wages. You've got wages in having extra hands on deck for the opening in those first few weeks. There's always some of us there from head office, like supporting the store and having all those extra people on just to make sure everything's going smoothly. You've also got legal costs for contracts and leases. You have to get your solicitors involved and they always cost a few $1,000s. As you can see, it's a lot. Obviously, our stores that we open now cost a whole lot, but it was never this from the beginning. And I don't want anyone to ever think this is how much it's going to cost them if they want to open a store. I look back to when we did open our Newcastle store. It worked out well for us because we had that building that we had at the very beginning. Our office was upstairs, our warehouse was attached downstairs, and then we just had the showroom at the bottom. So we didn't need to go through any of this fit out process. We had like a friend's friend come in to build the change rooms, and there's just 3 little change rooms, paid them, I think it was like $8,000. It was still a lot. And then because we were all working in the store, we just slowly set it up and we just pulled the stock from online. So opening a store isn't always going to cost this much, but because I guess now we are a big business, we're doing things in this kind of way where we are working with massive building companies, architects, solicitors, the whole lot. But you definitely don't have to start doing this. I wouldn't advise doing that. But this is just the reality of how much it does cost us being a bigger business. I mentioned earlier how opening up one more store runs a huge financial impact on our business. One of the hardest things about opening up a store is the fact that you have to fork out all of these costs well before you open. For us, from start to finish with a store, we're looking at like a 5 to 6 month process from the moment we make the decision to finding the right space, liaising with agents, going back and forth with solicitors, having the store designed, ordering all the stock, having the store built and everything put together. You're making a huge financial investment and not seeing any return on it until that store opens. It's scary to make such a huge investment without seeing a return straight away. It's not like you're just spending $1,000 and waiting 6 months to make it back. Like, it's a huge amount of money. And the thing with that as well is, as I'm spending that money on the store for that 6 month period before it opens, that's money I then don't have to spend on other things. And then what if you go into a quiet period online and then you're not making as much money and then you don't have money sitting around to maybe spend on some influencers or more ads? So it's just a really risky thing to do. What else is scary about opening retail stores? You're committing to the next 5 years of your life. Retail leases are really long, or commercial leases in general. And I'll go back to that first building that we had. I remember signing a 3-year lease there back in 2019. And I was like, oh my God, like the only lease I'd signed prior to that was the first warehouse, which was 12 months. And that wasn't very scary. And when I got this new space / store of ours, I remember saying, oh my God, 3 years, that is so fucking long. Like, that is so scary. That 3 years flew by. And with commercial leases, the longer the better, because the landlord's going to have that tenant for a long time. Also, when you're a business, you don't want to be changing locations every year anyway. So all of our leases that we have for all of our stores are 5 years. So when I commit to that next store, I'm committing to, I'm still going to have this store in fucking 5 years from now. And I say to our customers, you want us to open in Adelaide now, but are you still going to shop there in 4.5 years? Because I'm going to need you to, because that's how long I'm committing to this shit. It's just really bloody scary. I also jumped onto my Instagram story, which, by the way, I have an Instagram account for this podcast if you'd like to go and follow me on there. Like, we're still getting started. There's only a few posts on there, but I've been using the stories on there, which I'm loving. And I jumped on there and I got some of you to send in questions on this topic. So I thought I'd end up this episode with a few questions that people might have about opening a retail store. So the first one is, how often do you visit your stores outside of Newcastle and how do you make it work? That's a great question. And I don't know what people would mainly assume, but with me, I don't open our stores for me to work at them. Like, plain and simple. I wish I bloody could. And it may look that way, that like I'm opening them because I want to be there and I want to get amongst it. And in those early days, I definitely did. When we obviously had our Newcastle store for years before we opened that next one in Westfield Miranda. And when Westfield Miranda opened, like, I was there for weeks. Like, I was working on the floor, serving all the customers for those first 2 to 3 weeks. But I very quickly learnt with that, as much as I want to do that and be there to work there and serve all the customers, my time is way better spent doing other shit. Like, being the owner and the one driving the business forward, it's not the best thing for the business for me to be on the floor in one of our stores. Like, sure, it's great to meet the customers and, it's really exciting and fun and great to meet our community, but my job is to run the business. So it sounds mean or rude or whatever, but when it comes to setting up a store, I'm in there and then I'm out of there because I'm on to the next thing. I'm not there to work every day. And when I first started opening stores, even when I had our Newcastle store and I worked there a lot when we first opened it because it was this little baby store, I dealt with a lot of guilt of not actually being in the store. And even though I'd hired people to work in the stores, I would feel bad that they were there and I wasn't. And it took me honestly like a year to get out of that mindset of I can't feel guilty that I'm not working in the store, even though I really did. And, I work Monday to Friday. Of course, I work at home on the weekends. Like I never stop working, but that's like a mentality that I shook a while ago. So how do I make it work with me being based in Newcastle? Great question. We had a store manager in our Newcastle store named Grace. If you're a local to our Newey store, you might already know Grace, or maybe you've seen her on our social media. And for a long time when Grace was working and managing our Newcastle store, she would always pester me for like career growth. And I'd say, don't worry, Grace, it's coming. It's coming. This was before we opened any other stores. And then once we opened our Miranda store, I fucking booted her down there. I said, you're looking after both stores now. And I haven't seen her since. She jet sets all around all of our stores. And now she's our national retail manager. So we have Grace, who does an amazing job at overseeing all of our stores. And how do we make it work? We have strong structures in our retail stores as well. They have their managers, there's people in there that are working full time, and it's kind of a little bit of a chain of the managers and assistant managers working full time in the stores, running it day to day. Then if they have any problems, they come to Grace. If Grace has any problems, she'll go to our general manager. And then if shit's really hitting the fan, people will come to me. So I've stepped away from the day-to-day operations of our stores. As much as I'd love to be involved, I just can't because my time is already so stretched. Next question, hardest parts and easiest parts of owning a store. Hardest part, managing the staff and trusting people with your customers. And easiest part, selling our clothes because they're so fucking nice. Our stores are amazing for that. People walk in and put their hands through the racks and they're like, oh my God. It's one thing to sell clothes online and I know people are scared, but having our stores and people being able to touch everything and try it on, that's the easiest part. The products sell themselves. And fun fact, which I'm going to talk about in the next episode, our stores don't have any KPIs. Our staff do not have a single KPI. And if you work in retail, that would be like music to your ears, but I'm going to save that for next week's episode. The next person asked, who do you bounce ideas off aside from an accountant? Fun fact, I don't bounce any ideas off our accountant. I just go to him and tell him what we're doing. And he says, keep up the good work. I bounce all of my ideas off AJ. Biggest lesson you've learned so far in opening retail stores, everything is negotiable. I'm a professional negotiator. Especially when it comes to rent and all this kind of stuff, if they say to you, this is how much the rent is, you can go back to them and say, well, I'm going to offer you this. Negotiate everything. Don't ever just go with what someone offers you straight away. Next question, how did you know where to open after Newcastle? Sydney was our next best option because that's the number one city that we ship to. It's also a 2-hour drive or 2.5-hour drive from us, so it made the most sense logistically. And I just reached out to a bunch of shopping centres and Westfield Miranda was the one that got back to me first, so that's how that happened. What's your exit strategy if a store doesn't work out? Fucking no idea. Fucking no idea. You just have to walk away from it and pay whatever costs are associated with breaking the lease. I don't even want to think about that, but I probably should have a exit strategy. Has it been as successful or less than projected? The stores have taken me by absolute surprise. A lot of people say that retail is dead, but I think we have definitely proven that wrong, and I'll speak more about that in the next episode as to why in a world where retail is dead, I think we're doing something right. And the last question, what mindset do you tap into to make such a big investment like a store? I'd love to be able to tell you, but I think it's a bit of delusion, if I'm being honest. Just thinking, fuck yeah, I'm going to do this and it's going to be great, and just believing in yourself. I don't know. I think that's the mindset. It's just being fearless and trusting your gut and going with that thing. I also have a powerful brand to back us as well, which makes me more confident in my decisions. But anyway, my friends, that is the true cost of retail. I don't know what we're actually going to call this episode, but that has been my breakdown on the realities of opening a FAYT retail store. Again, I'd like to say this isn't how much it costs every single store to open. Some could cost $10 million to open. I don't even want to imagine a Kmart fit out. And some you can open for a lot less, like if you're working with a little space. But that's just the reality of opening a FAYT store. So next time you go to bug me and say, open here, open there, just remember how much it bloody costs me. So as always, thank you so much for listening. And I'm leaving you with my tip of the week. Everything is negotiable. Everything in life, not just in business, everything. And don't be afraid of negotiating. I love when I go and meet these real estate agents. And even when you go into a Westfield, they're basically real estate agents that you meet with. I just love going in there with full confidence and just seeing what you can get out of them. Don't just ever settle for that first offer. No matter what you're doing in life, everything is negotiable. Anyway, make sure to subscribe to my podcast if you enjoy it, and feel free to leave me a 5-star rating. That is all I accept here, no less. It means a lot when you leave your ratings. And if you want to follow me everywhere else, you know where to find me, just Brittney Saunders, or look us up, FAYT, FAYTlabel.com. Place an order if you want. It'll help me fund my next store opening. Every purchase counts. Anyway, until next time, remember to chase after your dreams as if they owe you money.